The cruiser lights hit first, red and blue washing over a quiet Charlotte street. Then the sound came, a hard slap on the hood. "I'm the law here," the officer snapped, loud enough for every porch light to flick on. Marcus Reed didn't flinch. Both hands stayed on the wheel. Back straight, voice calm, like he'd been here before and learned the cost of reacting the wrong way. "You don't belong here," the officer added, leaning in, making sure the neighbors could hear it. And they did. 5, maybe 6 people watching now. Phones out, no one speaking, no one stepping in. Marcus turned his head slowly, measured, controlled. "Officer," he said, "I'm asking you to reconsider your next move." That's when it got worse, because the officer smiled and reached for his cuffs. And right there, under the streetlight, on the edge of Marcus's jacket, something small caught the light. A metal pin. Easy to miss. Easy to ignore. The officer did exactly that. But that one detail, the one nobody paid attention to, was about to end a career before this night was over. The street was quiet in the way only certain neighborhoods in Charlotte could be. Wide sidewalks, trimmed hedges, porch lights glowing warm against the early evening sky. The sun had just dipped below the tree line, leaving behind a soft fold that clung to the pavement like it didn't want to let go. A dog barked somewhere in the distance. A lawn sprinkler ticked rhythmically across a patch of perfect grass. Then the flashing lights broke it. Red and blue washed over the parked cars, over the brick houses, over the faces that began to appear behind curtains and front doors. The cruiser had pulled up fast, tires crunching against gravel, stopping just behind an older dark gray sedan that sat quietly at the curb. Officer Ryan Keller stepped out like he owned the moment. Tall, broad-shouldered, his uniform crisp, his presence loud even before he spoke. His boots hit the pavement with deliberate weight as he walked toward the sedan. One hand rested near his belt, fingers brushing the edge of his holster. Not gripping, just close enough to be noticed. He didn't approach the driver's window. Instead, he walked straight to the front of the car and slammed his palm down on the hood. The sound cracked through the stillness. Inside the car, Marcus Reed didn't move. His hands stayed exactly where they had been, resting at 10 and 2 on the steering wheel. His back was straight, shoulders relaxed, chin level. The faint glow from the dashboard lit his face just enough to show the calm in his eyes. Not fear, not defiance, just calm. Keller leaned down slightly, peering through the windshield, his reflection bouncing back at him in the glass. "I'm the law here," he said, loud enough for anyone nearby to hear. A porch light flicked on across the street. Someone stepped out onto a front stoop, arms crossed, watching. Another figure appeared behind a window, phone already in hand. The neighborhood had shifted from quiet to alert in less than 10 seconds, like it had done this before. Marcus turned his head slowly, not quickly, not startled, just enough to meet the officer's gaze through the glass. There was something about the way he moved, measured, controlled, that didn't match the situation. Most people in that moment would have rushed, fumbled, spoken too fast. But Marcus didn't. He breathed in once, then out. And when he looked at Keller, it wasn't with challenge. It wasn't with submission either. It was something harder to read, something steady. Keller didn't like that. He stepped closer, his face now just inches from the windshield, his voice sharper. "I said I'm the law here. You understand that?" Still, Marcus didn't speak. The silence stretched. From the passenger seat, Angela Reed tightened her grip on her purse. Her fingers curled into the leather, knuckles whitening just slightly. She didn't look at the officer. She looked at her husband. She knew this moment. Not this exact street. Not this exact officer, but this moment. The tension, the waiting, the careful stillness. It wasn't new to her. Her breathing stayed shallow, controlled, like she was holding something back that had learned not to come out too quickly. Outside, another neighbor stepped onto the sidewalk. No one said anything. No one stepped forward. Keller straightened up and circled toward the driver's side window now. Slower this time, like he was giving the situation time to sink in, like he expected the man inside to crack under the weight of it. He tapped the glass once, hard. Marcus reached for the window controls, his movements deliberate. The glass slid down with a soft mechanical hum, letting in the cool evening air. For a second, neither man spoke. Then Keller leaned in slightly, his tone low but edged. "You don't belong here." The words hung there, heavier than they sounded. Angela's eyes flickered, just for a moment. Marcus didn't react the way most would. No sudden turn of the head, no sharp inhale, no raised voice. He simply looked at Keller, really looked at him. And in that moment, something subtle happened. Something small enough that no one watching from the sidewalks would have noticed. Marcus's right hand shifted slightly off the steering wheel. Not enough to alarm. Not enough to draw attention. Just enough for his fingers to brush the front of his jacket. Pinned neatly to the inside edge of his lapel, partially hidden by the fold of the fabric, was a small metal pin. It caught the faintest bit of light from the street lamp. A dull glint. Nothing flashy. Nothing meant to stand out. His fingers touched it for half a second, then returned to the wheel. Keller didn't see it. Or if he did, he didn't care, because he had already decided what he was looking at. "You hear me?" Keller pressed. "This neighborhood's not for you." Across the street, a man lifted his phone a little higher, angling for a better view. Another voice, quieter, came from somewhere near a driveway. "Just do what he says." It wasn't advice. It was resignation. Marcus's jaw tightened just slightly, almost imperceptible. Then finally he spoke. His voice was calm, even, the kind of voice that didn't try to fill space but somehow carried anyway. "Officer," he said, "I'm going to need you to tell me why I've been stopped." No attitude, no edge. Just a question. But something about the way he said it, clear, measured, controlled, shifted the air again. Keller's expression changed. Not dramatically, just a tightening around the eyes. A flicker of irritation that hadn't been there before, because that wasn't the response he expected. Not fear, not apology. A question. Keller leaned in closer, one hand braced against the doorframe now. "I don't have to explain anything to you," he said. "You're here because I said you're here." Marcus held his gaze, didn't look away, didn't raise his voice, just held it. From the sidewalk, someone whispered, "Man!" Angela's grip on her purse loosened just a fraction, her eyes moving between the two men. She knew what came next, or at least she thought she did. But even she didn't know how far this moment was about to go. Marcus took another slow breath, and then, just barely, he said, "I understand what you're saying, officer." A pause. "But I'm asking you to reconsider your next step." The words were soft, but they landed harder than anything else that had been said so far. Keller blinked once, then let out a short, humorless laugh. "Reconsider?" he repeated. "Or what?" Marcus didn't answer right away. The street seemed to hold its breath. And somewhere, deep in the quiet of that neighborhood, something unseen had already begun to shift. Something none of the people watching, not even the officer standing there, could fully understand yet. Because the man sitting behind that wheel, calm in the face of everything unfolding around him, was not who Ryan Keller thought he was. Not even close. And the next few minutes were about to prove it in a way that would change everything. But standing there, under the streetlight, with neighbors watching and silence pressing in from all sides, Keller still believed he was in control, and Marcus Reed still hadn't said who he really was. Not yet. The silence after his words lingered longer than it should have. Keller's smile faded. Just a little. Not gone, just thinner now, like something stretched too tight. Reconsider? Keller repeated, his voice dropping lower, sharper. You think you're in a position to tell me what to reconsider? Marcus didn't answer right away. He kept his hands on the wheel, fingers relaxed, not gripping, not trembling, just resting there like they belonged exactly where they were. Angela turned her head slightly toward him. Not fully, just enough to catch the side of his face. She knew that look. It wasn't defiance, it wasn't fear. It was control. The kind you don't learn overnight. The kind you build over years of choosing not to react when every instinct tells you to. I'm just asking for clarity, Marcus said finally. That's all. The words were simple, neutral, the kind that shouldn't escalate anything. But Keller's jaw tightened, because it wasn't the words, it was the tone. That calm, steady tone that didn't bend, didn't shrink, didn't ask for permission to exist. Keller stepped back half a pace, then leaned in again. Closer this time, one hand now gripping the top of the car door. You want clarity? He said. Here's your clarity. I saw a vehicle that didn't belong in this neighborhood, so I stopped it. That's the reason. Across the street, someone shifted uncomfortably. A woman standing on her porch crossed her arms tighter, her lips pressed thin. She didn't say anything. None of them did. Angela's fingers tightened again around her purse. Marcus's eyes didn't leave Keller's. That's not a legal reason to stop someone, he said quietly. There it was. Not loud, not aggressive, but it landed. Keller blinked. Just once. Then he let out a short breath through his nose, a sound that wasn't quite a laugh. Oh, so now you're a lawyer too? He said. No, Marcus replied. I just know my rights. That did it. Something shifted behind Keller's eyes. Something sharper now, more personal. This wasn't just about control anymore. It was about being challenged, even if the challenge came wrapped in calm. Keller straightened up, adjusting his stance like he was resetting the scene. Step out of the vehicle, he said. Angela's head snapped toward him. On what basis? Marcus asked. Keller's voice hardened instantly. On the basis that I told you to, he said. Step out. Now. The word now echoed louder than it needed to. A car passed slowly at the end of the block, the driver turning their head just enough to take in the flashing lights before moving on. Marcus exhaled slowly. Then, without any sudden movement, he reached for the door handle. Angela's hand shot out, resting lightly on his arm. Marcus, she said, barely above a whisper. He turned his head toward her. For a moment, the world outside the car faded. The lights, the neighbors, the officer standing there waiting. It was just the two of them. I'm okay, he said softly. She searched his face, looking for something, any sign that he wasn't. But all she found was that same steady calm, and something else. Something she couldn't quite name. She let go. Marcus opened the door. The hinges creaked softly as it swung out into the evening air. He stepped out slowly, deliberately, keeping his movements clear, visible. No sudden gestures, no room for misinterpretation. He closed the door behind him with a gentle push. Keller took a step back, giving him space, but not out of courtesy, out of control, like he was positioning a piece on a board. "Turn around," Keller said. Marcus didn't move immediately. "Officer," he said, "I haven't been given a reason for—" "Turn around!" Keller snapped. The sharpness of it cut through the air. A man standing near the sidewalk shifted his weight, glancing away like he didn't want to be part of it anymore. Marcus paused. Then he turned. Slowly. He placed his hands at his sides. Not raised, not tucked, just visible. Keller stepped forward, closer now, his presence filling the space between them. "You people always want to argue," Keller muttered, just loud enough. Angela heard it. Her eyes closed for half a second. Not in shock, in recognition. Marcus didn't react, didn't flinch, didn't turn back around. He just stood there. "Spread your feet," Keller ordered. Marcus complied. The gravel shifted under his shoes as he adjusted his stance. Keller began the pat-down. It wasn't rough, but it wasn't careful either. It was efficient, impersonal, like the man in front of him wasn't really a person at all, just a situation to process. From the porch, a phone camera zoomed in slightly. A teenager whispered, "Yo!" But no one stepped forward. No one said stop. No one said this is wrong. Angela stood a few feet away, her arms now crossed tightly across her chest, holding herself together. Her eyes never left Marcus. Keller's hands moved across Marcus's jacket, his sides, his pockets, then paused, right over the inside of the jacket, the same place Marcus had reached earlier. Keller tapped the fabric once, then slid his hand inside. He pulled out a wallet, flipped it open briefly, didn't really look. Then something else slipped free with it. The small metal pin. It caught the light as it dropped, landing softly on the hood of the car with a faint metallic click. Keller glanced at it. Just a glance, no curiosity, no pause. Nothing about it registered as important. He set the wallet down beside it and kept moving. Marcus watched the pin for half a second, just a fraction, then looked forward again. The street felt quieter now, heavier, like everyone watching knew something was off, but not enough to say it out loud. Keller finished the pat-down and stepped back. "Hands on the hood," he said. Marcus placed his hands on the warm metal of the car. The surface still held the heat of the day, faint against his palms. Angela took a step forward. "That's enough," she said. "He's done everything you've asked." Keller turned his head toward her. "Ma'am, I suggest you step back," he said. "I'm not interfering," she replied. "I'm asking. Step back," Keller repeated, louder now. Angela stopped, her jaw tightened, but she didn't move any further. Marcus kept his hands on the hood. Didn't turn, didn't speak, didn't give them anything. Keller looked at him for a moment. Really looked now, at the suit, at the posture, at the stillness. Something about it didn't fit the picture he had in his head. But instead of questioning it, he leaned further into it. "License and registration," he said. Marcus didn't move. "Officer," he said, his voice still steady. "You already have my wallet." Keller's eyes flicked to the hood, the wallet, the pin, then back to Marcus. For a split second, something flickered. Doubt? No. Dismissal. Because he had already decided, and nothing on that hood was going to change it. "Don't tell me what I have," Keller said. The words came out sharper than before. More personal, more dangerous. Behind them, a siren echoed faintly in the distance. Getting closer. Angela's eyes shifted toward the sound. Then back to Marcus. Something was coming, and whatever it was, It wasn't going to make this easier. The question wasn't whether this situation would escalate. It already had. The question was, how far was Keller willing to take it before he realized exactly who he was dealing with? Because Marcus Reed still hadn't told him. Not yet. The second cruiser pulled in slow, its headlights cutting across the street like a spotlight. The engine idled low, steady, as the red and blue lights layered over Keller's. Brighter now, louder in their silence. Doors opened. 2 more officers stepped out. Sergeant Cole moved first. Mid-50s, stocky, the kind of man who had been in uniform long enough to stop reacting quickly. His face was unreadable, his pace unhurried. Behind him came Officer Jenna Park, younger, her movements more alert. Her eyes already scanning the scene before she even reached the sidewalk. They took in everything in seconds. Marcus, with his hands on their hood. Keller standing close, posture rigid. Angela a few feet away, tense but controlled. The neighbors watching, phones raised but voices quiet. Cole exhaled through his nose. "What do we got?" he asked, not loud, not soft. Keller didn't turn fully toward him. His eyes stayed on Marcus. "Suspicious vehicle," Keller said. "Driver's being difficult." The word hung there. Difficult. Jenna's gaze shifted to Marcus. She expected something. Raised voices, tension, maybe resistance. Instead, she saw a man standing still. Hands flat against the car, back straight, head slightly lowered, not in submission, but in restraint. It didn't match the report. Cole glanced at the sedan. Clean, parked properly. No visible damage, no signs of distress. Then at Marcus again. He frowned, just slightly. "License run yet?" Cole asked. Keller shook his head. "Not yet." Cole nodded once like that was enough. "All right," he said. "Your call." 3 words, simple, final. Jenna shifted her weight, her eyes flicking back to Marcus, then to the hood of the car. That's when she saw it, the small metal pin. It sat just inches from Marcus's wallet, catching the light in a way that didn't match anything else around it. Not flashy, not decorative, but intentional, like it belonged somewhere specific. She stepped closer, drawn to it without really meaning to. "Hey," she started. "Don't worry about that," Keller cut in quickly. "It's nothing." Jenna paused. Her instincts told her otherwise. But Cole had already turned slightly away, scanning the street, the houses, the growing number of onlookers. He wasn't focused on the pin. He wasn't focused on Marcus. He was focused on the situation staying controlled. Jenna hesitated. Then she crouched slightly, picking up the pin between her fingers. It was heavier than it looked, cool to the touch. She turned it over. There was an emblem etched into it, small, detailed, not something you'd find in a store. Clean lines, official, purposeful. Her brow furrowed. "What is this?" she asked, more to herself than anyone else. Keller didn't even glance over. "I said ignore it," he replied, sharper this time. Jenna looked up. Something in his tone made her pause longer than she should have. Then she set the pin back down. Face up this time. Marcus didn't move, but his eyes shifted, just briefly, toward the hood, toward the pin, then forward again. Angela saw it. That tiny shift. And something in her chest tightened. Because she knew that pin. She'd seen it before. Seen the way Marcus handled it. Never flashy, never mentioned. Always tucked away like it didn't matter. But it did. She swallowed, forcing the thought down. Now wasn't the time. Cole stepped forward again. "All right," he said, his voice calm but carrying authority. "Let's keep this moving." Keller nodded, his posture stiffening as if reinforced. "Step back," Keller said to Marcus. Marcus lifted his hands from the hood slowly, carefully, making sure every movement was visible. He stepped back. Keller moved in front of him now, closer than before. "Turn around," he said. Marcus did. The gravel shifted under his shoes again, a soft crunch that seemed louder in the quiet. Jenna watched closely now, really watched. The way Marcus moved, the way he held himself. There was no panic, no anger, no desperation. Just control. And that unsettled her more than anything else. "Hands behind your back," Keller ordered. Angela stepped forward again, this time more urgent. "Wait," she said. "He hasn't done anything." Cole turned his head toward her. "Ma'am, we need you to step back," he said, firmer now. "This is unnecessary," Angela replied. "You have no reason." "Step back," Cole repeated. His voice didn't rise, but it didn't need to. Angela stopped. Not because she agreed, but because she understood the line she was being pushed toward. She stepped back. One step, no more. Marcus placed his hands behind his back. Keller reached for the cuffs. The metal clicked softly as they came free. Jenna felt something tighten in her chest. "Sergeant," she said quietly, leaning slightly toward Cole. "Should we maybe just run his ID first?" Cole didn't look at her. "Calloway's got this," he said. Jenna's lips pressed together. She nodded once, but her eyes didn't leave Marcus. The cuffs closed around his wrists, not violently, but firmly. The sound of metal locking into place echoed louder than anything else that had happened so far. Marcus's shoulders shifted slightly with the pressure, but he didn't resist, didn't speak, didn't react. Angela's breath caught. A sharp, quiet sound she tried to hide. Across the street, a phone zoomed in. Someone whispered, "They're cuffing him." But still, no one stepped forward. Keller tightened the cuffs just enough to make a point, then stepped back, looking Marcus over like the situation had finally aligned with what he expected. "There," Keller said. "That wasn't so hard, was it?" Marcus turned his head slightly, just enough to speak without looking directly at him. "I told you," he said quietly. "You're making a mistake." Keller scoffed. "Yeah," he said. "You keep saying that." Marcus didn't respond. He didn't need to, because something had already begun to shift. Jenna felt it. Angela felt it. Even Cole, though he wouldn't admit it, felt it too. The air had changed, not because of anything loud, but because of something quiet, something unresolved, something sitting right there on the hood of that car. The wallet and the pin, ignored, dismissed, left behind, and somehow, more important than anything Keller had said or done so far. Jenna glanced at it again, then at Marcus, then back at the pin. A thought crossed her mind. Small, unformed, but persistent. What if that wasn't nothing? What if that was the one thing in this entire situation they should have paid attention to? She opened her mouth, closed it, because the moment had already moved on. Keller was guiding Marcus toward the cruiser now. Cole was watching the crowd. Angela stood still, her hands at her sides, her eyes locked on her husband. And the neighbors. They kept watching, silent, as if waiting for something they couldn't name. Because deep down, even without knowing why, they all felt it. This wasn't over, not even close. And whatever came next was going to matter far more than what had already happened. Because Marcus Reed still hadn't told them who he was, and the longer that truth stayed hidden, The worse this was going to get, for everyone involved. The back door of the cruiser opened with a hollow metallic sound that echoed louder than it should have in the quiet neighborhood. Keller placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder. Not rough, but not respectful either. Just enough pressure to guide, to control, to remind. "Watch your head," he said flatly. Marcus lowered himself into the back seat without resistance. The vinyl was cold against his suit, the kind of cold that seeped through fabric and settled into bone. His hands, still cuffed behind him, rested awkwardly against the small of his back. The door shut, a dull, final sound. Outside, Angela stood frozen for a second longer than she should have. Then she moved, not running, not rushing, walking, straight to the driver's side of the cruiser. "Officer," she said, her voice steady but tighter now. "You cannot do this without cause." Keller didn't look at her right away. He circled the front of the cruiser, taking his time, like the moment belonged to him. "You don't get to tell me what I can or can't do," he replied, finally meeting her eyes. Angela didn't flinch. "I'm telling you what the law says," she said, "and right now you're ignoring it." Keller smiled. Not amused, not friendly, just dismissive. "You keep talking like that," he said, "and you might find yourself in the back seat too." The words landed, heavy. Angela's breath caught, but only for a second. Then she straightened. Her voice didn't rise. It sharpened. "My name is Angela Reed," she said. "I'm asking you one more time, on what basis you are detaining my husband?" For a split second, Keller hesitated. Not because of her tone, because of her composure. It mirrored Marcus's. Too calm, too certain. But the moment passed. "Suspicion," Keller said. "That's all I need." Angela's lips parted slightly. "That's not enough," she said. "Not legally." "Then you can take it up later," Keller replied. He turned away from her. Conversation over, authority asserted. Angela stood there, her chest rising and falling slowly, fighting the urge to say more, to push, to break through. But she knew that look in Keller's eyes, and she knew what happened when people like him felt cornered. So instead, she stepped back. One step, then another. Her hands trembled just slightly as she reached into her bag. Not for anything dramatic, not for anything loud, just her phone. She dialed. The call connected almost immediately. "It's happening again," she said. No panic, no explanation, just that. A pause on the other end. Then a voice, low, controlled. "Where are you?" She gave the street name, the house number. Another pause. "Stay there," the voice said. "Do not leave." The line went dead. Angela lowered the phone slowly. Her eyes lifted. Back to the cruiser, back to Marcus. Through the tinted glass, she could just barely make out his silhouette. Still, unmoving, like none of this had touched him, like he was waiting, not hoping, not fearing, waiting. Across the street, the crowd had grown. 5, 6, maybe more. Some stood on sidewalks. Others watched from porches, arms folded, faces tight with discomfort. Phones were still up, still recording. But the silence had changed. It wasn't just passive anymore. It was uneasy, because something about this didn't sit right, even if no one said it. Sergeant Cole walked over to Keller, lowering his voice slightly. "You sure about this?" he asked. Keller didn't hesitate. "Yeah." Cole glanced toward the cruiser, then toward Angela, then back to Keller. "He didn't resist," Cole said. He didn't comply either, Keller replied. That's not what I saw. Keller turned his head. Slowly. And what you saw doesn't change what I'm telling you, he said. The words weren't loud, but they were firm, a line drawn. Cole held his gaze for a second, then looked away, not convinced, but not pushing either. All right, Cole said. Just make sure your report matches. Keller nodded once. It will. Jenna stood a few feet away, her arms crossed loosely, her eyes moving between them. She had heard everything, and something about it didn't settle. She looked back at the sedan, at the hood, the wallet, the pin, still sitting there, unclaimed, unexamined. The streetlight caught it again, that same quiet glint. Jenna took a step toward it, then stopped, because Keller was already moving. Let's go, he said, heading toward the driver's seat. Cole followed. The second cruiser idled behind them, its engine humming softly. Jenna hesitated, just for a second. Then she walked over to the sedan. She reached down, picked up the pin again. This time she looked longer, closer. The emblem was clearer now, detailed, official, not decorative, not casual. Something about it felt important. Jenna, Keller called from the cruiser. She looked up. Leave it, he added. She paused, the pin resting between her fingers. Then slowly, she set it back down, but not where it had been. She placed it carefully, deliberately, face up, right next to the wallet. Then she stepped back and walked away. The cruiser doors slammed shut. Engines revved slightly. The lights flashed brighter as the vehicles pulled away from the curb. Angela stood there, watching them go. Her face calm. Too calm. Because inside, something was building. Not panic, not fear. Something else, something deeper. The kind of certainty that doesn't come from hope, but from knowing that this moment, this exact moment, was going to matter, more than anyone there realized. Behind her, one of the neighbors finally spoke. Ma'am, you okay? Angela didn't turn around. She kept her eyes on the empty space where the cruiser had been. I will be, she said, and then, after a beat, so will he. The street fell quiet again, but it wasn't the same quiet as before. This one carried weight, expectation, because somewhere just out of sight, something had already been set in motion. And by the time it reached them, nothing about this situation would look the same. Not the officers, not the system, not the man they had just taken away, because they still didn't know who Marcus Reed really was. But they were about to find out, and when they did, there would be no going back. The cruiser rolled through the neighborhood at a steady pace, tires humming softly against the asphalt. Red and blue lights reflected off windows, fences, parked cars, painting everything in flashes of authority that felt louder than sirens ever could. Inside the back seat, Marcus Reed sat upright, hands cuffed behind him, shoulders squared, eyes forward. The city passed by in quiet frames, familiar streets, houses he had driven past 100 times before. Tonight, they looked different through the reinforced glass. Distant, detached, like he had been moved outside of his own life. Up front, Keller adjusted the rearview mirror, not to check traffic, to check Marcus. You real comfortable back there, Keller said, almost casually. Marcus didn't respond, didn't even shift. Keller watched him for another second, then scoffed under his breath. Most people would be asking questions by now, he added. Still nothing. That silence, it wasn't empty. It was controlled, and it bothered Keller more than shouting ever could. In the passenger seat, Cole leaned back slightly, one arm resting on the window ledge. He didn't turn around, but his eyes flicked toward the reflection in the glass. He saw it too, that stillness. Maybe he already knows the answers, Cole said quietly. Keller let out a short laugh. Yeah, he replied. They always think they do. Behind them, the second cruiser followed at a distance. Jenna sat in the passenger seat, her hands resting loosely in her lap, but her mind wasn't on the road. It was back on that street, on the hood of that car, on the pin. She replayed the image in her head, the emblem, the weight of it in her hand, the way Marcus had glanced at it. That wasn't random. That wasn't decoration. Something about it had felt official, but Keller had dismissed it so quickly. Too quickly. You good? Her partner asked, glancing over. Jenna nodded. Yeah, she said. Just thinking. About what? She hesitated, then shook her head. Nothing. But it wasn't nothing. And it wasn't going away. The cruisers turned onto a wider road now, heading toward the precinct. Streetlights lined the way, casting long shadows that slid across the hood of the car like passing thoughts. Inside the back seat, Marcus shifted slightly, not struggling, just adjusting, the cuffs pressed into his wrists, not painfully, but firmly enough to remind him they were there. He inhaled slowly, then exhaled, measured, controlled, the way he had learned to do years ago, because this wasn't new. Not exactly. Different street, different officer, same pattern, same assumptions, same outcome, at least for now. Up front, Keller tapped his fingers lightly against the steering wheel. You got ID on you? He asked, even though he already knew the answer. Marcus spoke without raising his voice. You took my wallet. Keller smirked. Yeah, I did. A pause. Didn't see anything special in there. Marcus didn't reply. Didn't need to, because whatever Keller had looked at, he hadn't really seen. The cruiser slowed as it approached a red light. For a moment, everything paused. Cars idling, engines humming, a couple walking across the intersection, unaware of the scene unfolding just feet away. Keller glanced at them, then back at the road, then again at the mirror. At Marcus. You ever been in trouble before? He asked. Marcus's gaze didn't shift. No. Keller nodded slowly, like he didn't believe it. Funny, he said. You've got that look. What look is that? Marcus asked. Keller's lips curved slightly. Like you think you're smarter than everyone else. Another pause. Marcus tilted his head just slightly. Or maybe, he said, I just don't think I'm less. The words were quiet, but they landed. Keller's grip on the wheel tightened just a fraction. The light turned green. The cruiser moved forward. No one spoke for the next few seconds. Then Cole shifted in his seat. You said he matched something? He asked. Keller shrugged. General description. Cole frowned. Of what? Keller didn't answer right away. Then, suspicious activity in the area. Cole turned his head slightly. That's vague. It's enough, Keller said. Cole didn't push further, but his expression didn't smooth out either. In the second cruiser, Jenna stared out the window, but she wasn't seeing the road. She was seeing that moment again. Marcus's hand brushing his jacket, the pin falling, the way he didn't react when it was ignored. Most people would have said something, pointed it out, used it, but he hadn't. He had let it sit there, like it didn't matter, or like he didn't need it to. That was the part that stuck. Why wouldn't he use something important? Unless he knew he didn't have to. The precinct came into view. A low building, fluorescent lights glowing harsh against the darkening sky. The American flag out front hung still, unmoving in the calm air. The cruisers pulled in. Engines cut. Doors opened. Marcus was guided out of the back seat. Same hand on the shoulder. Same controlled pressure. But something had shifted. Not outside. Inside. Because now, they were on official ground. And whatever assumptions Keller had made out on that street, they were about to be tested. Marcus stepped forward without resistance. Into the building. Into the light. Into a system that believed it already knew him. But didn't. Not even close. Behind him, Jenna stepped out of the second cruiser. She paused for a second. Looking at Marcus. Really looking. Then at Keller. Then at the building. A thought formed. Clearer now. Stronger. And this time, she didn't push it away. Because something about this situation wasn't just off. It was wrong. And the deeper it went, the harder it was going to be to ignore. Marcus walked through the precinct doors, and the moment he crossed that threshold, everything that had been ignored outside was about to follow them inside. Because whatever they thought this was, they were about to find out it wasn't that simple. Not at all. The fluorescent lights inside the precinct hummed softly, casting a pale, unforgiving glow over everything they touched. The kind of light that didn't warm a room, it exposed it. Marcus stepped across the threshold without hesitation. The air inside smelled faintly of coffee that had been sitting too long, mixed with something sterile, something procedural. Papers shuffled somewhere in the background. A phone rang once, then stopped. Conversations lowered just slightly as eyes turned. Not all at once, but enough. Keller guided Marcus forward, one hand still resting on his shoulder. "Sit," he said, motioning toward a metal bench along the wall. Marcus complied, lowering himself slowly. The bench was cold, solid, unwelcoming. His cuffed hands remained behind his back, his posture still upright, composed. Angela entered seconds later. No one stopped her. No one acknowledged her either. She moved straight to a chair across the room and sat down, her eyes never leaving Marcus. Her purse rested in her lap, her hands folded over it, steady now, not trembling anymore. She had made the call. Now she was waiting. At the front desk, a booking officer glanced up. "Who's this?" he asked. "Traffic stop," Keller replied. "Suspicious behavior. Possible non-compliance." The officer nodded without much interest, turning back to his computer. "ID?" Keller reached into his pocket and placed Marcus's wallet on the counter. The officer opened it, scrolled through the contents. Driver's license, cards. Nothing unusual at first glance. He typed the name into the system. Marcus Reed. Date of birth, address. The keyboard clicked under his fingers as the system processed. For a moment, nothing changed. Then, the screen updated. The officer's fingers paused. Not dramatically, not enough for anyone across the room to notice, but just enough. His eyes flicked back to the screen, then to Marcus, then back again. Something shifted. A detail, a flag, a line of information that didn't match the narrative already forming in the room. But instead of reacting, he kept typing, because that's what you do. You process, you follow steps, you don't disrupt. Across the room, Jenna leaned against the wall, watching. Not openly, not obviously, but watching. She saw the hesitation, that half-second pause, and it confirmed what she had already begun to feel. Something was off. Keller stepped closer to the desk. "All good?" he asked. The booking officer nodded. "Yeah," he said quickly. "Running it now." Keller didn't question it. Didn't look at the screen. Didn't ask for details. Because in his mind, the situation was already defined. Marcus sat on the bench, his gaze fixed forward. Not on Keller. Not on the officers. On nothing in particular. Like he was somewhere else entirely. Angela watched him, studied him, trying to read what he wasn't saying, trying to understand how he could sit there like that. Still, calm, as if this wasn't happening to him. But it was, and yet, he didn't look like a man waiting for something to go wrong. He looked like a man waiting for something to arrive. Jenna pushed off the wall and walked slowly toward the desk. "Can I see that?" she asked quietly, nodding toward the screen. The booking officer hesitated, just for a second, then angled the monitor slightly. Jenna leaned in. Her eyes scanned the information. Name, address, then something lower. Something that wasn't obvious, not bolded, not highlighted. But there. Her breath caught slightly. She straightened, looked at Marcus, then back at the screen. "Is that?" she started. "Doesn't matter," Keller cut in. Jenna turned toward him. "You didn't even look." "I don't need to," Keller replied. "I saw enough out there." Jenna held his gaze for a moment, longer than she should have. Then she looked away, because she knew that tone, and she knew what it meant. The decision had already been made. The facts just hadn't caught up yet. Angela stood. Slowly, the chair legs scraped softly against the floor. Every eye in the room shifted toward her now. Not loudly, but enough. She walked toward the desk, each step measured, each movement controlled. She placed both hands lightly on the counter. "Officer," she said, addressing no one and everyone at the same time, "I would like to know why my husband is being held." Keller turned. "We already went over this." "No," Angela said, her voice calm but firm. "You told us what you think. I'm asking what you can prove." The room went quiet. Not completely, but enough. Because that wasn't a question people asked in here. Not like that. Not calmly. Not directly. Keller took a step closer. "You're pushing this," he said. Angela didn't move. "I'm clarifying it." Another pause. Tension tightened the space between them. Then, a phone rang. Sharp, cutting through everything. The desk officer picked it up. "Charlotte PD," he said. A beat. His posture changed. Subtly, but noticeably. "Yes," he said. "He's here." Another pause. His eyes flicked to Marcus, then to Keller. "Yes, sir," he added. His tone had shifted. Not casual anymore. Not routine. Something else. Something more careful. He placed the phone down slowly. Looked at Keller. "You're gonna want to take this," he said. Keller frowned. "For what?" The officer didn't answer directly. He just gestured toward the phone. Keller stepped forward. Picked it up. "Yeah," he said. Silence, then his expression changed. Not all at once, but in stages. Confusion first, then doubt, then something tighter, something colder. He didn't speak. He just listened. Across the room, Marcus remained still. Angela didn't move. Jenna watched everything. And for the first time since this began, the balance in the room shifted. Just slightly. Because whatever was being said on that phone was beginning to crack something open. something Keller couldn't control. Not anymore. And as he stood there listening, the confidence that had carried him through the stop started to thin. Because for the first time, he wasn't the only one deciding what this situation meant, and whatever was coming next was already on its way. The question was, had it come too late, or just in time? Marcus Reed didn't look up, didn't react, didn't acknowledge the shift, because he already knew this wasn't over. It had only just begun. Keller stood frozen with the phone pressed to his ear. "Repeat that," he said, his voice lower now, stripped of its earlier edge. Across the room, no one spoke. Even the hum of the fluorescent lights seemed to fade, like the building itself was listening. Yes, he's here," Keller said again, slower this time. "Who is this?" A pause. Then Keller's posture shifted. Not dramatically, not enough for someone glancing casually to notice. But for those paying attention, Angela, Jenna, the booking officer, it was there. The stiffness in his shoulders loosened. The certainty in his stance flickered. He turned slightly, angling his body away from the room. "I understand," he said, "but I need confirmation. That doesn't just—" He stopped mid-sentence, listened. His eyes moved, first to Marcus, sitting on the bench, then to the desk, then briefly to the pin resting beside the wallet. For the first time, he looked at it. Really looked. The small piece of metal that had meant nothing 5 minutes ago now held his attention longer than it should have. "What do you mean, oversight board?" Keller asked quietly into the phone. Jenna's breath caught. Angela didn't move. Marcus remained still. On the other end of the line, the voice continued. Measured, controlled, certain. Keller swallowed. Yeah, I hear you," he said. Another pause, then, no, he didn't say anything. His eyes flicked to Marcus again. Still calm, still silent, still waiting. Keller's grip on the phone tightened. "All right," he said finally. "Understood." He hung up slowly. For a moment he didn't move, didn't speak, didn't turn around. Then, "What was that?" Cole asked from behind him. Keller turned. And for the first time since this started, he didn't have an immediate answer. "It was," he began, then stopped, because whatever he had been about to say didn't feel solid anymore. "It was nothing," he said instead, too quickly. But the room had already shifted. The word nothing didn't land the way he wanted it to. Cole frowned. "That didn't sound like nothing." Keller's jaw tightened. "I've got it under control." Jenna stepped forward slightly. "Sir, should we uncuff him?" The question hung in the air. Simple, reasonable, dangerous. Keller looked at her. Not angry, not yet, but something close. "You questioning my call?" he asked. Jenna didn't back down. "Just asking if we have enough to hold him." Another silence. This one heavier. Because now it wasn't just Marcus and Angela. Now it was inside the system. And cracks were beginning to show. Cole stepped in. "Let's slow this down," he said, raising a hand slightly. "We can verify everything before we go further." Keller shook his head. "No," he said. "We're already here. We finish it." Marcus shifted slightly on the bench, just enough to straighten his shoulders. Then he spoke. Quiet. Clear. "You still have time to fix this." Every head in the room turned, not because of the volume, but because of the certainty. Keller let out a breath through his nose. "Fix what?" he said. "You haven't told me anything." Marcus met his gaze. "You didn't ask the right questions." That landed harder than anything else, because it was true. and everyone in the room knew it. The booking officer looked down at the screen again, at the information sitting right there, at the detail he had seen and chosen not to speak on. His fingers hovered over the keyboard, then moved. He printed something. Quietly. The printer whirred. Paper slid out. He picked it up, walked around the desk, and handed it to Cole. "Sir," he said softly. Cole took it, looked down. His eyes moved across the page, then stopped. His expression changed. Subtle, but real. He looked up, at Marcus, then at Keller. "You might want to take a look at this," he said. Keller hesitated. Just for a second, then reached for the paper. His eyes scanned it, line by line. And with each line, the confidence that had carried him through the night slipped further away. "What is this?" he asked. Though the answer was right there in his hands, the booking officer didn't reply. He didn't need to, because Keller already knew. Or at least, he was starting to. Marcus watched him, not with satisfaction, not with anger, just waiting. Because the truth didn't need to be forced. It just needed to be seen. Keller looked up. His eyes met Marcus's, and for the first time, there was something different there. Not authority, not control. Something else. Uncertainty. "You should have said something," Keller muttered. Marcus shook his head slowly. "No," he said. "You should have looked." The room fell silent. Not the kind of silence from before. This one had weight, consequences, because now, the story Keller had been telling himself was unraveling, and everyone could see it. Angela finally stood, not rushed, not emotional, just steady. She walked to Marcus, stopped a few feet away, and looked at Keller. "You said he didn't belong here," she said. Her voice didn't rise, didn't shake. "But you never asked why he does." No one spoke, no one moved, because in that moment, the power in the room had shifted. Not completely, not yet, but enough. Enough to make every next decision matter. Keller looked down at the paper again, then at the pin on the desk, then back at Marcus. The pieces were coming together, slowly, too slowly, and he knew it. Because whatever that phone call had started, this paper had confirmed, and the truth, the full truth, was still just out of reach, but getting closer with every second. And when it finally landed, it wasn't just going to change the room. It was going to change everything. For him, for Marcus, for the system he thought he controlled. And there would be no walking it back. Not this time. The paper in Keller's hand felt heavier than it should have. It was just ink on a page, lines of text, data, identifiers. The kind of thing he had looked at 1,000 times before without a second thought. But this time, his eyes kept returning to the same line. Not bold, not highlighted, but undeniable. He read it again, then once more, as if repetition might change what it said. It didn't. Across the room, the air had shifted completely. No one was pretending this was routine anymore. Cole stood still, arms at his sides, watching Keller. Not Marcus, not Angela. Keller, because whatever came next was going to come from him. Jenna hadn't moved, but her focus had sharpened. She wasn't guessing anymore. She knew. Not everything, but enough. The silence stretched. Then, the front doors of the precinct opened. Not loudly, not dramatically, but with purpose. Footsteps followed, more than one. Angela turned first. Not surprised, not startled, just confirming. 3 people walked in. A man in a dark suit, older, silver hair, posture straight. Another beside him, mid-40s, carrying a slim leather folder. And behind them, a woman in her 30s, sharp eyes, no hesitation in her stride. They didn't pause at the front desk, didn't ask where to go. They walked straight toward the center of the room, like they already knew. "Excuse me," the older man said, his voice calm but carrying weight. "We're here for Marcus Reed." Every eye turned. The booking officer straightened. Cole shifted slightly. Jenna stepped back, instinctively making space. Keller didn't move. Not yet. The man in the suit reached into his pocket and pulled out a badge. Not a police badge, something else, official, recognized. He held it up just long enough. "City Oversight Council," he said. "We need to speak with him immediately." The words landed like a quiet explosion. Angela exhaled slowly. Relief, not loud, not visible, but there. Keller's fingers tightened around the paper. "You can't just walk in here and—" he started. The woman behind the man stepped forward. "We already did," she said, "and we're not here to debate access." Her tone wasn't aggressive. It didn't need to be. It was certain, unmovable. The kind of tone that didn't ask permission. Cole looked at Keller, then at the group, then back at Marcus. And in that moment, the balance tipped. "Take the cuffs off," Cole said. Keller's head snapped toward him. "What?" "You heard me." Keller shook his head. "No, not until we take them off." This time there was no suggestion in Cole's voice, just command, the same kind Keller had used earlier. But now, directed at him, the room held its breath. Keller looked around, at Cole, at Jenna, at the group that had just walked in, at Angela, at Marcus, still sitting, still calm, still waiting. Then, slowly, Keller stepped forward. He reached for the cuffs. His hands weren't as steady as before. The metal clicked. Once, then again, the tension released. Marcus brought his hands forward, rubbed his wrists lightly. No complaint, no reaction, just movement. He stood, adjusted his jacket, and for the first time since this began, he looked directly at the group that had entered. The older man nodded slightly. Respect, not deference, but acknowledgement. "You all right?" he asked. Marcus gave a small nod. "I am now." The woman stepped forward. "We need a private room," she said. Cole gestured down the hall. "Conference room's open." They moved. Not rushed, not chaotic, just deliberate. Marcus walked with them. Angela fell into step beside him, shoulder to shoulder. No words exchanged, none needed. As they passed Keller, Marcus stopped, just for a second, close enough that Keller had no choice but to meet his eyes. "You said you were the law," Marcus said quietly. No anger, no raised voice, just truth. Keller didn't respond. Couldn't. Because whatever he thought he understood earlier had been incomplete. And now, it was unraveling. Marcus held his gaze for one more second, then turned and walked away. The conference room door closed behind them, leaving Keller standing in the middle of the precinct, paper still in hand, pen still on the desk, silence pressing in from every side. Jenna stepped closer, not confrontational, just present. "You didn't see it," she said softly. Keller didn't look at her. "The pin," she added. "You didn't see what it meant." He didn't answer. Because now, he did. Too late. Across the room, the booking officer cleared his throat. Cole walked over. "What exactly did that file say?" he asked. The officer hesitated, then spoke. "Marcus Reed," he said, "chair of the Civilian Police Oversight Board." The words settled into the room. Heavy, final. Keller closed his eyes briefly, just for a second, because that title, that one line, changed everything. Not just the situation, not just the night. Everything. The reports, the body cams, the authority he thought he had. All of it. Now subject to someone he had just handcuffed. Outside, the streetlights flickered on fully. Night had settled in. And inside that building, a different kind of darkness had been exposed. One that couldn't be ignored anymore. Because the man they had tried to control was the one who had the power to hold them accountable. And the moment that truth landed, there was no version of this story that ended quietly. Not anymore. The conference room door closed with a soft click, but the weight of that sound carried through the entire precinct. Inside, the lights were warmer than the main floor. Softer. A small table sat in the center, surrounded by chairs that had seen too many long conversations and not enough easy ones. Marcus Reed stood at the head of the table. Not because anyone told him to, because that's where he belonged. Angela sat to his right, her posture finally easing, not from comfort, but from certainty. The kind that comes when something long overdue finally begins to unfold. Across from them, the three who had arrived, counsel, advisor, and aide, laid out folders, tablets, documents. Not rushed, not frantic, prepared. Because this wasn't a surprise to them. It was a response. Marcus adjusted his cuffs. Not restraints now, just the sleeves of his jacket, and looked toward the door for a brief moment. Then back to the table. "Let's keep this simple," he said. His voice hadn't changed. Still calm, still measured. But now, everyone in the room understood it differently. Outside, Keller hadn't moved. He stood near the desk, the paper still in his hand, though he wasn't reading it anymore. He didn't need to. He already knew what it said. Cole approached slowly, stopping a few feet away. "You want to tell me what happened out there?" he asked. Keller exhaled. "It was a stop," he said. "Suspicious vehicle." Cole's eyes narrowed slightly. "That's not what I'm asking." Keller didn't respond right away. Because now, he could hear it. The gaps, the places where his explanation didn't hold, didn't match, didn't make sense anymore. Jenna stood off to the side, arms folded loosely, watching both of them. Waiting. Because this was the moment. Not the arrest, not the reveal. This. The point where someone either told the truth or buried it. Keller looked up. "I made a call," he said, "based on what I saw." "And what did you see?" Cole asked. Keller hesitated, just for a second. But it was enough. Jenna noticed. Cole noticed. Everyone noticed. "A car that didn't fit," Keller said finally. The words sounded thinner now, less certain. Cole took a step closer. "That's not a reason," he said. "It is when you've been doing this long enough." "No," Cole replied. "It's what you tell yourself when you don't have one." The silence that followed was different from before. This one wasn't about tension. It was about truth. Because now, there was nowhere left to hide it. Across the room, the booking officer shifted uncomfortably. He looked at the monitor again, at the same line, the one he had seen earlier, the one he hadn't said out loud. And now, he couldn't ignore it. Sir, he said quietly. Cole turned. Yes? The officer hesitated. Then, I saw it when I ran his ID, he said. Keller's head snapped toward him. What? The officer swallowed. I saw the designation, he continued. Oversight board. It flagged immediately. Cole's expression hardened. And you didn't say anything? The officer looked down. I thought it was a mistake. You thought wrong. The words landed harder than anything Keller had said all night. Because they weren't defensive. They weren't reactive. They were final. Jenna stepped forward. You didn't think it was a mistake, she said quietly. You just didn't want to be the one to say it. The officer didn't argue, because she was right. And everyone knew it. Cole ran a hand across his face. This is exactly how it happens, he muttered. One bad call, and everyone else just lets it ride. Keller's jaw tightened. I didn't force anyone to stay quiet, he said. No, Cole replied. You didn't have to. The words hung there. Heavy, because that was the truth no one liked to say out loud. Silence doesn't need to be ordered. It just needs to be easier than speaking up. The conference room door opened. Marcus stepped out. Alone, the room went still, not tense, not uncertain, just still. Because now, there was no confusion left. Marcus walked forward, stopping in the center of the room. Not close to Keller, not far either. Just enough distance to make it clear. This wasn't personal. It was something bigger. You wrote a report? Marcus asked. Keller blinked. What? Out there, Marcus continued. You made a decision. You'll have to justify it. Keller straightened slightly. I followed procedure. Marcus nodded once. Then you won't have a problem explaining it. Another pause. Keller looked at him. Really looked now. At the man he had stopped. The man he had cuffed. The man he had dismissed. And for the first time, he saw something he hadn't allowed himself to see before. Not authority, not power. Something quieter. Something stronger. Certainty. Marcus didn't need to prove anything. He didn't need to raise his voice. Didn't need to argue. Because the truth was already there. Keller just hadn't looked at it. Marcus turned slightly. His gaze moved across the room. At Jenna, at the booking officer, at Cole. Each of them held it for a moment. Not accusing, not judging, just seeing. You all had a chance to stop this, he said. No anger, no bitterness. Just fact. And that made it heavier than anything else. Jenna lowered her eyes. Just briefly. The booking officer didn't look up at all. Cole stood still. Because they all knew he was right. Marcus turned back toward Keller. You said I didn't belong, he said. Keller didn't respond. Because now, he understood the weight of that statement. Understood what it meant. Understood what it revealed. Marcus let the silence sit for a second longer, then, you never asked who decides that, he added. Another pause. Then he stepped back. Not retreating, just done. The moment had shifted completely. No raised voices, no dramatic confrontation, just truth. Clear, unavoidable. And now, everything that came next would be built on it. Because this wasn't just about one stop, one officer, one mistake. It was about the system that allowed it. The silence that supported it. The assumptions that fueled it. And the cost of all three. Marcus looked toward Angela. She stood, walked to his side. Together, equal, steady. Then he looked back at the room one last time. This conversation isn't finished, he said. And this time, it wasn't a warning. It was a promise. Because what had started on that quiet street was now something much bigger. And there was no stopping it anymore. Not here, not now. Not after everything that had already been set in motion. The precinct didn't return to normal after Marcus spoke. It couldn't. Something invisible had shifted, like a line that had always been there, but no one had acknowledged, had finally been crossed. And once you see a line like that, you can't pretend it isn't there anymore. Marcus and Angela stood side by side, steady, composed. Not triumphant, not angry, just present. Keller felt it before he understood it. That shift, that loss, not of authority on paper, but of control in the room, because the rules hadn't changed. But the way people were looking at him had. Cole didn't step in this time, didn't redirect, didn't smooth things over. He just watched. And that silence, from someone who had backed him minutes earlier, said more than any words could. Keller cleared his throat. "This is getting blown out of proportion," he said, his voice trying to find its footing again. "I made a stop. That's it." No one responded. Not immediately. Because now, every word mattered. Marcus took a step forward. Not aggressive, not confrontational, just enough to close the distance. "You didn't make a stop," he said. His voice was still calm, still even, but there was something else in it now. "Wait. You made a decision," Marcus continued, "and then you defended it instead of questioning it." Keller shook his head. "That's not what happened." "It is," Marcus said, "and you know it." The room held its breath again, not out of fear, out of clarity, because this wasn't about perception anymore. It was about fact. Keller looked around, at Cole, at Jenna, at the booking officer. No one stepped in, no one backed him up, and for the first time that night, he was standing alone. "You didn't identify yourself," Keller said, grasping for something solid. "You didn't say who you were." Marcus nodded. "That's true." A pause. "I didn't." Keller's shoulders lifted slightly, like he had found a point to stand on. "So how was I supposed to know?" he pressed. Marcus held his gaze. "You weren't," he said. That stopped him, not loudly, but completely. "Then what?" Keller started. "You were supposed to treat me like it didn't matter," Marcus said. The words landed quietly, but they hit harder than anything else, because they cut through everything else Keller had been holding on to. Excuses, assumptions, procedure. "You were supposed to follow the law," Marcus continued, "not guess who deserves it." Keller's mouth opened, closed, because there was no response to that. Not one that held. Marcus took another small step forward. Now they stood face to face, close enough that Keller couldn't look past him. "You told me you were the law," Marcus said. No anger, no volume, just truth. Keller didn't blink, didn't move. "I am not above it," Marcus went on. "You are not above it." The silence deepened. Even the hum of the building seemed to fade. "You don't get to decide who belongs," Marcus said. "You don't get to decide who matters." Keller swallowed. His throat felt dry, because everything Marcus was saying was simple, clear, undeniable, and there was nowhere left to hide from it. Marcus held his gaze for one last moment. Then, "You said you were the law," he repeated. A pause, and then the words that would follow Keller long after this night ended. "You were wrong." No raised voice, no dramatic emphasis, just finality. The kind that doesn't need force to carry weight. Keller felt something in his chest shift. Not physically, something deeper. Because in that moment, it wasn't about rank or badge or authority. It was about truth, and he had been standing on the wrong side of it. No one spoke. No one moved, because there was nothing left to add. The room had already reached its conclusion. Cole stepped forward then, not to interrupt, but to acknowledge. "We'll need statements," he said, his voice steady, professional again, but different now. Grounded. "Body cam footage," Jenna added quietly. The booking officer nodded. "Everything's recorded." Keller looked at them, then back at Marcus, and for the first time, there was no challenge in his eyes, no defiance, just realization. Marcus stepped back. The space between them returned. But it didn't feel the same, because what had been said couldn't be undone. Angela reached for Marcus's hand, not tightly, just enough, and he let her. The contact small, human, grounding. They turned toward the door together. Not rushed, not escorted. They walked out of the room on their own, and no one stopped them. No one questioned it, because there was no reason left to. As they reached the exit, Marcus paused. Just for a second. He looked back, not at Keller, at the room, at the system, at everything that had allowed this moment to happen. And then, he walked out. The door closed behind them. Soft. Final. Inside, Keller stood alone, still in uniform, still in the same place. But nothing about it felt the same anymore, because the words he had used to claim control had just ended it. Not loudly, not dramatically, but completely, and he knew it, even if no one had said it out loud yet. This wasn't just a bad call. This was the kind of moment that followed you, into reports, into reviews, into decisions made by people who hadn't been there, but would see everything. And there would be no explaining it away, no rewriting it, because the truth had already been spoken, and it had been heard, clearly, completely. And once something like that happens, it doesn't go back, not ever. The night outside felt different, cooler, quieter, like the world had taken a step back to make space for what had just happened. Marcus and Angela walked side by side down the precinct steps, the glow of the building fading behind them. The parking lot stretched out in front of them, lit by tall poles casting long shadows across the pavement. No sirens, no voices, just the distant hum of traffic and the soft echo of their footsteps. Angela exhaled slowly, the tension she had held for hours finally loosening, but not disappearing. "Are you okay?" she asked. Marcus nodded once. "I am." But it wasn't relief in his voice. Not entirely. Angela looked at him. Really looked. "You didn't have to go through that," she said. Marcus didn't answer right away. He looked out toward the street, toward the direction they had come from. "That's the problem," he said quietly. "I did." Angela's eyes softened, because she understood what he meant. Not just tonight, but every time before it. Every moment where calm had been required just to stay safe. Every decision to hold dignity instead of reacting. They reached their car. Angela unlocked it, but neither of them got in. Not yet, because the silence between them still had something to say. "They're going to come after him," Angela said. Marcus nodded. "They have to." "And the department?" Marcus's gaze stayed steady. "That depends on whether they want to fix something or protect it." Angela let that settle, because she knew the answer wasn't simple. Inside the precinct, things had already begun to move. Not loudly, not publicly, but decisively. Cole stood in his office, reading through initial reports already being drafted. The words felt different now, heavier, more careful. Every line mattered. Every detail would be examined. He looked up as Jenna stepped into the doorway. "You got a minute?" she asked. He nodded. She walked in, closing the door behind her. "I want to make a statement," she said. Cole leaned back slightly. "About tonight?" Jenna nodded. "Everything I saw." Cole studied her for a moment. "You understand what that means," he said. "I do." "And you're sure?" Jenna didn't hesitate. "I should have said something sooner," she replied. "Out there." Cole didn't argue, because she was right. But she was saying something now. And sometimes, that's where change starts. "All right," he said. "We'll document it." Jenna nodded, then paused. "The pin," she added. Cole frowned slightly. "What about it?" "It wasn't nothing," she said. "It was the whole thing." Cole didn't respond right away, because now he saw it too. That small detail, ignored, dismissed. The moment where everything could have gone differently. "Yeah," he said finally. "I think it was." Across the building, Keller sat alone. Not in a cell, not in an office. Just at a desk that suddenly didn't feel like his anymore. The paper was still in front of him. The same one. He hadn't moved it. Hadn't folded it. Hadn't put it away. Because doing that would mean accepting it. And he wasn't there yet. His badge rested beside it. Not removed. Not surrendered. Just sitting there. He stared at it. At the symbol he had carried for years. The authority he had believed in. The certainty. And for the first time, he questioned it. Not the badge itself, but how he had used it. How easily he had decided. How quickly he had dismissed. How confidently he had been wrong. The words replayed in his head. "You were supposed to treat me like it didn't matter." That was the part that stayed. Because it wasn't about Marcus, not really. It was about everyone else. Everyone who didn't have a title, didn't have a voice, didn't have someone to call. Keller leaned back in his chair, closed his eyes, just for a second, because now there was no noise to hide behind. No urgency, no action. Just silence. And in that silence, the truth had room to settle. Back out, Marcus finally opened the car door. He paused, then looked at Angela. "You remember the shelter on 5th?" he asked. She nodded. "Of course." "I'm going there tomorrow," he said. Angela smiled faintly. "I figured. Because that was who he was. Not the title, not the position, not the authority, the work, the people, the quiet acts no one recorded. They got into the car, the engine started. Soft, steady. As they pulled out of the lot, Marcus glanced once in the rearview mirror. The precinct stood behind them. Lights on, doors closed. But inside, things were already changing. Not perfectly, not instantly, but moving. Because moments like this don't disappear. They ripple through systems, through people, through choices that come later. Angela reached over, placing her hand gently over his. He didn't pull away, didn't tighten his grip. Just let it rest there, grounded, present. They drove off into the night. Not victorious, not defeated, just steady. Because the truth had come out. And that was enough. For now. Back inside, Cole picked up the phone, dialed a number he hadn't used in a long time. Yeah, he said when it connected. We're going to need an internal review. Full process. He listened, then added, No, this one doesn't wait. Because he knew. Everyone knew. This wasn't something that could be filed away, or forgotten, or quietly explained. This was the kind of moment that demanded something more, something real. And whether the system was ready or not, it was going to have to answer for it. Because being right, being calm, being dignified, had come at a cost, and now that cost was being counted. For everyone. Morning came quietly, not with sirens or headlines, at least not at first, but with light. Soft sunlight slipped through the blinds of a modest brick building on 5th Street, stretching across long folding tables and rows of metal chairs. The smell of coffee and warm bread filled the air, mixing with the low murmur of voices and the clatter of dishes being set out. The shelter was already open, and Marcus Reed was already there. He stood behind a serving table, sleeves rolled just enough to keep them clean, a simple apron tied around his waist. No suit, no badge, no title, just a man serving breakfast. "Morning, Mr. Reed," an older woman said, as she stepped forward with her tray. "Morning, Miss Laverne," Marcus replied with a small smile, placing eggs onto her plate. "You get some rest?" She chuckled softly. "Enough to be back here, didn't I?" "That's a good sign," he said. Angela moved beside him, handing out cups of coffee, her movements easy, practiced. She had changed, too, out of the tension of the night, into something familiar, something grounded. No one in the room spoke about what had happened. Not directly. But a few people had seen it. A phone video, a quiet upload. Something shared between neighbors that didn't stay small for long. A man at one of the tables looked up from his phone, then back at Marcus, shook his head slightly. Not in disbelief, in understanding. Because stories like that, they traveled, and they didn't need explaining. At the far end of the room, a young boy sat with his tray, watching Marcus. 8 years old, maybe 9, eyes wide, curious. He waited until Marcus stepped away from the serving table, then raised his hand slightly. "Excuse me," the boy said. Marcus turned, walked over, and crouched slightly to meet him at eye level. "Yeah?" he asked gently. The boy hesitated. Then, "Why didn't you fight back?" he asked. The question hung there. Simple, honest, the kind only a child would ask out loud. Angela paused where she stood. A few people nearby went quiet. Not because they were uncomfortable, because they were listening. Marcus looked at the boy, really looked at him. And for a moment, he saw more than just a question. He saw curiosity, confusion, the beginning of understanding something too complex to explain in one sentence. Marcus smiled slightly, not wide, not forced, just enough. "Because I didn't need to," he said. The boy frowned. But he was wrong. Marcus nodded. He was. "Then why didn't you tell him?" Marcus leaned in just a little. "I did," he said, "just not the way you think." The boy considered that, then looked down at his plate. Still thinking. Marcus stood, placing a gentle hand on the boy's shoulder before stepping away. The room slowly returned to its rhythm. Coffee poured, chairs shifted, voices picked back up, life moving forward. Outside, the city had already started reacting. Local news stations ran the story by mid-morning. Not sensationalized, not exaggerated, just clear. Charlotte officer under investigation after controversial stop. The footage spoke for itself. The stillness, the commands, the silence from the crowd, the words, "I'm the law here," And then, the outcome. Internal review launched. Body cam footage secured. Statements requested. Officer Ryan Keller placed on administrative leave pending investigation. The department issued a statement. Careful, measured, but different from before, because this time, they couldn't ignore it. Not with the footage, not with the oversight board involved, not with Marcus Reed at the center of it. Inside the precinct, the atmosphere had changed overnight. Quieter, more deliberate. People spoke in lower tones, moved with more awareness. Jenna sat at a desk, typing her statement. Every detail, every moment, no shortcuts, no omissions. She paused once, thinking back to the pin, then kept typing, because she understood now. It wasn't just a detail. It was the moment everything could have shifted, and didn't. Cole stood in his office reviewing reports, not rushing, not skimming, reading, because this time, every word mattered. Keller wasn't there. His desk sat empty, badge gone, chair pushed in, the absence louder than anything he had said the night before. Back at the shelter, Marcus wiped down the table after the last plate had been cleared. Angela walked over, leaning lightly against the edge. "You know they're talking about it everywhere," she said. Marcus nodded. "I figured." She studied him for a second. "You okay with that?" Marcus looked around the room, at the empty chairs, at the sunlight still coming through the windows, at the quiet. "I'm okay with what comes from it," he said. Angela smiled softly. "Which is?" Marcus picked up a stack of plates, carrying them toward the kitchen. "Change," he said simply. "Not dramatic, not certain, just possible." Angela followed him in. The door swung shut behind them. Outside, a small flyer had been taped to the shelter's front window. "Community oversight meeting, open to all residents." It hadn't been there before, but it was there now, because one moment, one decision, one refusal to see someone clearly had led to something bigger, something that couldn't be undone, but could be improved. And somewhere, in another part of the city, another street waited, another interaction, another choice. But now, there was a story behind it, a reminder that dignity doesn't come from a title or a badge or a position. It comes from who you are, when no one chooses to see it. Marcus Reed had known that all along, and he didn't need to prove it. Because in the end, the truth had done that for him. When Marcus Reed stood in that shelter the next morning, quietly serving breakfast like nothing had happened, that said more about who he was than anything that happened in that precinct ever could. Sometimes the real lesson isn't about who holds power. It's about how someone chooses to act when they have it and don't need to prove it. Marcus didn't fight to be seen, because his dignity was never something anyone else could take away in the first place. So today, think about one moment where you felt misunderstood or judged unfairly. Instead of reacting, ask yourself, what would it look like to stand in your truth the way Marcus did? If this story stayed with you, comment 1 below. And tell me, have you ever been in a moment where staying calm was harder than speaking up? There's another story coming next, and this one might change the way you see silence forever.